Okay. Come over here. Alright. Think we're live. I got the microphones going. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Here it is. It's Chris with Free Will Photos. We're going to get into a photo edit for the day. And if you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Every day I'm going to be posting some content to this channel, at least for a very short period of time. If you watched my last video, you know that I shoot a lot of bracketed photos / HDR photos, and here's a few from a recent hike that my daughter and I took. And I'm just going to go through and use the HDR feature that's native to Adobe Lightroom CC. So if you have Lightroom CC, you can go ahead and follow along with a photo of your own, or you can just watch the video and enjoy. So I use the auto bracket feature, and as you can see, some of these got overexposed. This is a place called Angel Rocks, and I'm looking for a photo that I took. So these are actually all the HDR merged versions of the photo, and here we go. This is the version, oh, I'm sorry, that's from a focus stacking panorama, not a focus stacking. This is the photo that I want to edit. So I'm going to go ahead and select the last three in this series, which are right here. Right click and go to Photo Merge HDR. I like the seamless and simplistic method that the HDR method inside of Lightroom has versus the Nik FX Pro. Shot these on a 35mm DX lens with my D5200. So if you're one of those technical guys and you want to know what that looks like, then, or what that is, then what I shot this with, and there you go. All right. I leave this at auto align and auto settings. That just gives me a good starting point. I'm not worried about any ghosting issues because all these leaves, hopefully by the time that I'm done with this, those leaves will not be an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and let that finish merging up here. And once it's done, you'll see it pop up down here at the end. This is it right here. Oh no, that's not it. Where did you go, Mr. Picture? It put it into a stack. So what I do is I unstack them, and then I find the HDR merge, which is this one right here, because it's labeled D&G down here at the bottom. You can see it's labeled D&G. So I'm going to right click, and I always change these colors to green. This is just for my own personal organization. That way I know what I'm doing. Alright, double click, and here we are inside of the develop module. Now, for some reason, it doesn't look as sharp as, so when I focused up here. Not as sharp as I wanted to, but the first thing I want to do is get some detail back in the sky. So come over here to the develop. Thought I was in the develop module. Alright, first thing I want to do is get some detail back in the sky, and I usually just bring down the exposure until I get to the point where I have a little bit of detail. It was a pretty flat day, and I'm not worried about the foreground because I always expose for the sky in my landscape photos. And then I like to contrast almost everything. I like some really hard contrast images. And then I'm not as concerned about shadows being dark, as long as I have a black point that is even. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Option, click on black, and then I am going to bring my black point just to where I'm only losing a little bit of detail. Now the areas that I'm losing detail in, you can see right here. I'll show you that one more time. I'm not as concerned about those areas because to me that just it just brings to the overall image. Now the white point, I think that the reason why some of those areas are probably why the image looks so dark, minus the stop and a third exposure. I guess taking away the stop and a third of exposure, but whatever. So I'm gonna throw a little bit of clarity in there, and all that really does is throw some extra contrast into edges and dehaze this just a bit. That'll give me a little bit more clarity in the sky. So for the vibrance, I really only feel, let's see what this is doing, bring it all the way up. So obviously I don't like that, and that's no good. So we'll leave it at 14. I think the auto settings got that one right. So the next thing that I do is I come down to my tone curve, and I like to keep my midtones just where they are. And now this is where I add in a little bit of extra contrast. So darken those shadows just a bit. And you're gonna see this rock face come to life here in a little bit. Right now, I'm just trying to get the global settings the way that I like them and want to manipulate them. So it's okay if this is a little dark for now. I'm gonna actually go into my green channel, and I am going to pull back my greens just a tad. Let's see. No, don't like the way that that's starting to look. If I throw some green in there, that actually looks pretty good. And of course the blue, I gotta throw some blue. Yeah. Now, that's a pretty cool effect, but I think I'm just gonna leave the blue channel alone, go back to RGB, and I think that's all I'm gonna do in the tone curve today. Now this is where I'm gonna actually affect these greens, which I really like the way that the greens look right there. Click on color, and then I like to do individual colors. So with my greens, I don't want them as bold in the picture because I want the attention to be on the rock face. So I'm gonna bring down the luminance on those greens. As you can see, they're starting to get a little bit darker, and that just helps with the contrasty feel that I have for the overall image. And then I'm going to desaturate them a little bit because I don't want them as green. So I'm at -32 here for this image at least. If you see, as I pull them up, those greens are really starting to become more alive, and they really stand out, and I don't want the greens to be that strong in this image. I think the hue for the greens are fine. We'll go into the yellow channel, and again we'll bring down, because some of these leaves, they have a little bit of yellow in them, and we'll desaturate that just a touch. Yeah. Alright. That's all I'm going to do inside of there, because if I go to the blue channel here and I bring down the luminance, I do get a little bit of, I like what that's doing to the sky. I don't want it to be so saturated, and I want the sky to have more of a warm blue feel. So I'm going to push it a little bit closer to the purples. I'm at +17. If I go all the way over there, it turns into like some crazy purple sky, but I only want it to be at 17 right now. So we'll leave it like that. And then I don't have anything for split toning. I'm not going to worry about detail just yet, and I'm not going to do anything with lens corrections just yet. There's a known fact, Adobe Lightroom, great software, but it does move slow. And when you click this enable profile corrections, it's a great thing. I just don't like the fact that it slows down the program, so I leave that alone. Alright, moving on. We're going to go into the cropping feature here. So this twig on the right side of the frame, not a fan of right now, so I'm just gonna crop that out. And I like to leave this at the original aspect ratio, which is the 4:3 ratio shot in my computer. Because I want the rock face to kind of be in the center, but to also hold the attention of the viewer, I am going to make it look larger in the frame. And the way you do that, or at least the way that I do that, is I take away from the negative space in the sky, and I think that composition complements the rock a little bit more. Putting it, using the rule of thirds here, obviously. I don't plan on printing this picture, so the amount that I just cropped this photo to, I think that it'll be fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and it looks pretty dead straight, so I'm not as concerned about it. I do have a weird crop going on over here. I need to figure out what I want to do with that. So since I have some room on this rule of third, or on that point, I'll just bring it like so, and I think there we go. So now the rock, we see the greens, and I'm gonna do some local adjustments to really take care of that, because when you edit a photo, at least my personal approach to editing photos is I only want to edit the photo globally in the areas that I know I'm going to affect in dramatic ways, or I'm sorry, in less dramatic ways. When I really want to get these greens down, then what I'm going to do is I try this out a few different ways. I have a lot of different brushes in here, but what I'm going to do this time is just reset the whole thing, and I'm going to make a custom brush. So I'll bring down the exposure a little bit, and I'll bring down the black point, and I'll also desaturate a little bit. I've already made these a little bit desaturated. I'm going to bring this brush, and I will drop it right down here. Now, I know this looks weird right now, but it'll make sense here in a little bit, because I don't care for these greens, and I'm just going to make sure that it covers the bottom there. Alright, then I'm going to go ahead and grab this brush, and this allows me to add the adjustment in other places. Now, I don't want to go too far up with this, but in areas where I want this effect to be, I can just paint in with the brush. If you want to see a mask, you can use O, or I do a lot of clicks. But as you can see, I have this area. I'll get that and get in here. I want to leave the rock face untouched for the most part, and I have my flow fairly low too, so I'm not like doing harsh edits, even though those strokes weren't the greatest. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and click. Oh, I didn't mean to click done, but I did it. Alright, so go back to the radio filter, click on that one, and I'm gonna hit O to turn off the overlay, because I want to see what I'm actually affecting. And I go pretty drastic at times with this, because, like I said, I don't really want these greens to be the primary focus. I want people to know that there's green bushes down there, but I don't really want people to focus in on those. So just keep moving those out of the way, and I'm actually going to take away some of the clarity from those. Okay, and I think that does good for that. So then I'm going to hit a new one, and I use radio filters because I just love the way that they work. Now, obviously, I'm going to bring some life to the front of this, or to the side, whatever, of this rock face. Open up the shadows here, because I want you all to be able to see the details that are happening over here. And you see how just opening up those shadows starts to bring a little bit more interest to this side. And then I'm going to go ahead and right click on that, duplicate, and I'll bring it down here, rotate it. And this is all trial and error. I know that I want to bring some attention to certain parts of the rock and not so much to other parts of the rock. So like this part, I think I'll expose it just a little bit because there's all those little white rock features in there. In fact, I think I'll throw some exposure onto this one as well. Just a little bit though. Okay, and maybe have it take up more of the space on the rock. So that way this rock really gets some definition. Now, the sun was pretty much over in this area, and I want to get some sunlight that makes it look like the sun was really hitting this area. I actually have a preset down here. Where is it? Not big light. I think it's sun enhancer, but let's see if this is it. Oh, no, that is definitely not it. So we'll get rid of that one. And we'll keep on looking. I definitely have one that is, maybe it's light ray. Yeah, there we go. So this one just has a little bit of a orange yellow tint to it, and this is where the sun was hitting on the rock. It just wasn't as intense because, little fun fact, in Alaska we were going through some forest fires, and this part of, or in this particular area, there were fires going on, and it's a little smoky, but all right. We'll go ahead and throw that down here. I didn't mean to put the sun enhancer on that too. And I just feel like the back side of this rock, I mean, I know that it's in shadow because of where the sun's coming from, but I just feel like the back side of the rock is not getting the love that it deserves. I think part of that is just because I have too small of a selection. Okay. And I think I need to get one more down here. Okay. Go like this. Bam. And you know what? I need one over here. And this just, like I said, it puts the highlight on the rock, gives a little bit of character. I don't like how bright those are. Maybe desaturate this whole section a little bit more. Drag that over. I wonder if that moves the entire overlay. No, it didn't. Alright, good. Alright, so Now I'm done with the radio filter. I'm going to jump over here to the, and I'll try Sky Warm just to see what happens. So before, I used to be concerned about like pulling this down over the entire image, but now that we have brushes, I'm not as concerned about that. I'm not a fan of Sky Warm, so let's try Sky Cold. Sky Cold makes it way too blue, so we'll just back that off, because I do want to enhance the blue in the sky, but not too much. And when you drop the exposure, it's probably the best way to do that. Alright, now I'm going to take the brush and I am going to erase. Go ahead and get an overlay here. I'm going to erase the blue sky enhancement from everywhere that is green. So make my brush a little bigger. Get this. Make it a little smaller so I don't go too far into the sky. I just want it off my rock face, and I'll come back and use there's a feature, the auto masking feature that I'll turn on. Right now I just want to get it off the rock face as much as I can. And then I'll paint this all back in here in a little bit. Okay. It will affect this tree a tad, but I'm not as concerned about the tree as I am my rock, because the rock is my main subject in this entire image. So now we're going to auto mask, go back to, there we go. Alright. And I'm just going to follow along the edges here. Painting. There we go. I have my cursor inside of the rock, so I gotta go back and unpaint those. Wherever your crosshair is, that's where it's trying to detect the contrast to determine if that's an edge or not. So as long as I keep it in the sky, which is what I'm trying to do here, it will detect the edge quite well. I'm messing up my gradient. That looks terrible. That really does look pretty bad. Okay. Let's try this one more time. I'm gonna delete that one. Draw it in one more again. Or one more time. Because that is not how I wanted that to come out. Now I'm going to click on brush and we'll try it the opposite way. We'll try it with deleting the overlay. What just happened? Gotta go back to my history. I was pushing the wrong button to change the size of my brush. So erase, auto mask, I'm gonna go around the edges here. There we go. Now we're getting the look that I really wanted. And it's not gonna be the absolute perfect, but it's definitely going to get me where I would like to be. And as you take your time, and you know, we all get better at photo editing. We will see a dramatic change in the way that this all works. But now that that's done, I can take off the auto mask, make my brush a little bit bigger. The flow is already up 100%, so I don't want to go outside because I don't have auto mask on anymore, but I can just delete all of this overlay now with little to no. I don't want to move that. I just want to get this off of here. So obviously Lightroom, great for some quick edits. And this is not as quick as I would probably like it to be, but there we go. And now we can take a look at that, and you see there's a little bit more separation between the sky and the rock face here. I'm actually going to drop the exposure on my sky just a little bit more. And I think that is that. So, last thing, we'll go ahead and hit the enable profile corrections. We will leave the photo just like so. And I think I'm gonna change the global exposure just to bump it up just a little bit. I like darker images, but I feel like that one was a little too dark. Now I gotta go back to a gradient filter, choose the sky, and I'm gonna drop the sky down. Starting to get this purple tint. So I'm just gonna push it towards blue until, no, not that blue. Still thinking. I don't want it to be crazy blue. And maybe saturate it a little bit and see what happens. No. I do like the blue that is there. It's just too blue for me right now. There we go. That's a much more natural blue sky. Alright, so now the last thing that I do, because this is a digital negative, you gotta throw some sharpening on this bad boy. I'm going to zoom in because I'm more concerned about seeing the sharpening happen inside of my rock face here. We're gonna let that finish. Looks like I'm getting some good definition and detail there. Shot this at a pretty low resolution, so there's some grain. If you look there, it could benefit from a little bit of denoising, but I don't need a whole lot of The grain itself, no one looks at the picture like this close up. You don't see the grain. Grain doesn't really bother me, so especially when you print the grain, it actually helps add to the contrast and sharpness of an image. So if you're concerned about grain, don't be. All right, well, as soon as that renders, like I said, those lens corrections, they make Adobe Lightroom move a little bit slower. So I think that is going to be it. Please let me know what you think about the photo, what you think about HDR in the comment section below. And if this is your first time to the channel, go ahead and hit subscribe. I make videos just like this, hopefully not as long as this in the future, but my first 2 videos have definitely been 30 plus minutes. So thank you for sticking with me. If you stayed all the way to the end, you can see the description of all my gear listed in the description with all the links. Those are affiliate links, so if you buy any of those, it definitely helps out with supporting this channel and upgrading gear and equipment, so I can bring videos to you just like this in the future, and hopefully better. So until next time, keep editing photos and have fun.